Alright, properties. So we know normal classes. My class. Yeah. So the way normal classes work, you instantiate them and then you can do things with them, right? So this prints this attribute 22. But there are times when you need special behavior from an attribute. So say, for example, my class was going to be some kind of container. I don't know, let's say. And let's say we wanted a way to get the length of the container. So in my class, yeah, and then we pass in some crap here, right, like so. And of course, you know, we could just call the len function ourselves, but what this does is lets us get the length of the class and not the length of the list attribute of the class. Does that make sense?
What?
So, here, first we'll do this. So c.items stuck these items onto this attribute here. C.length gives us the length. So if we say my class is like, I don't know, some special container stuff. So that's the description of the class. We can get the length of our special container of stuff like this. And then let's say we want to do something like add an item, self.items.append item, right? And def remove item self.items.remove item. Okay, so now we have a way to adjust our list here, right?
Oh, but the length is still 3.
Length is still 3. So what we could do is go through all of these and change it every time, right?
Yeah.
So now it should stay in sync like you'd expect, right? The other thing we could do is just compute the length on the fly every time we want it. So in that case, we would do this a little differently. We have a function instead. So now it works again because we're computing it from the actual list of stuff, right? But now we have a function. And sometimes you want a function, but sometimes you don't want a function. One really important time you might not want a function is if previously you had it like we had it before, where it was just a regular attribute, and now you want to change it so that it updates automatically like this. So what that would mean is that all of the code that uses this class is now broken. And because previously self.length was a number, and now it's a function. So if you had code before, let's remove this function for now and put it back here. So if you had code before that did things like I don't know, this is fine actually. We're printing the value, right? If you had code before that used this length function, or the length attribute, oops, then everything was peachy back when it was just an attribute. But now we've turned it into a function. And so now it's broken. It doesn't tell us the length anymore. It says, hey.
Because you have to change it down there.
Right, but suppose you don't have control of this code.
Why not?
Because suppose you wrote this class and somebody else is using it to do something you don't know about.
Okay.
Like, for example, say they had to do this in Kivy. So from version 1.8 to 1.9, something changed. And now they would have to say, well, here's version 1.9, and oh, by the way, all previous programs no longer work.
Yeah.
Which sucks. Nobody wants that. So instead, what you can do, the simplest way, is make what's called a property.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a special decorator, and we don't have to talk about decorators right now. Just know that it modifies this function.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a special one that makes it so that when you access this attribute, it automatically calls the function.
Okay.
So now, suddenly it works again. But this code down here doesn't have to know that everything changed.
Yeah.
The other thing you can do, this is just what's called a getter property, meaning it just gets a value. If you try to set a value, we got an error here because we can't set this attribute because it's a function. Like, what does it mean to set a value here if we compute it ourselves every time? So then what you have to do is define a set function, I guess, and I usually don't do it this way, so hopefully I get this right. I think this is right. Yeah, probably. Def length self. So we're gonna make a little hidden. Yeah, it's kind of tricky for length because what would it mean to set the length? It really depends on these items, right? Whatever. We'll just fake it. So let's say when you set the length, value. So let's say if you set a length larger than what is already there, the value is larger or equal to what's already there, we don't do anything. And if this isn't true, then we come down here and we clip the list. So now what we've done is say if we specify a length which is shorter than the current list, it just cuts off the end of the list until it's that length. And if it's longer than the end of the list, it doesn't do anything. I guess we could add items to the list, but for the sake of example, this will be fine. So now if we go through here, I did something wrong, didn't I? Oh, yes. We didn't save our result. So before I was truncating the list, but it makes a copy of the list, and I wasn't storing that copy. Does that make sense? I was saying, like, give me this list, and I only want the first, X values from the list, but then I wasn't saving that result anywhere. So now I'm taking that result and I'm saving it in place of the old list.
Okay.
Okay. And so now you can see what happens down here.
Yeah.
So we started with 3, which is how we constructed the class on line 31. Then we added a 4, and you can see that length is going along with us just fine. Then we set the length to 6, which is larger than 4, so it didn't do anything. And then we set the length to 2, and so it cut it down to 2. So this is how properties work. It's basically a secret function that runs when you try to access the attribute or try to set a value to it.
Okay.
And this is kind of a trivial example here, but you can do a lot of really crazy things with this because
Wait, I was thinking about it. What did you say? What was the last line you said? I was thinking about the length setter, and then I didn't really hear what you said.
I said, what did I say? I said properties are, it secretly executes a function basically when you access an attribute.
Okay.
And depending on what you're doing will determine which function you're actually accessing.
How does
here.
it know which function?
So if you're getting the attribute, then it does this one.
Why?
Because this is the getter. I mean, that's just, this is...
Because you put property there?
Yeah, so by default, when you define just a property, like if we don't define this one, then the property refers to what happens when you get the value.
Okay, and the other one?
And, oops. The other one, as you can see here is setter, refers to what happens when you try to set the value to something new.
Okay.
Set the attribute to a new value.
Okay, yeah, okay. I get it.
Which is what's happening here. And you can do all kinds of magic, like suppose you had an email address attribute. You could make it check that the email address makes sense before it will accept it, and raise an error if it doesn't give you a valid email or whatever. Yeah. Or, you know, you can do all kinds of crazy things, and it's really out of scope of the basic discussion.
Okay.